All right. Speaking of a guy who has, is it 67 years perfect attendance, Don, here? 69. Come on over here. Don Kraft is, Don has been just an iconic leader in our community for decades and decades, and especially in the Rotary Club of Seattle. So when Don came to me before, well, partway through my year as president, and said, hey, I'd like to do a little segment every once in a while on the history of our club so we don't forget it, so we can celebrate it. So his segments are called 4 Bits, and this is another edition of that. So Don, welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Since when did 92 years old get to be a laugh line? Taylor, I'm working on Jim McCurdy's record in this club also. And I already took away one of your records. I was 21 with that classification advertising when I came in Rotary. On February 28th, 1985, the featured speaker at this club was Justice Charles C. Smith, speaking on the subject of Black History Month. Judge Smith was highly respected as our state's first African-American Supreme Court justice, and one who had worked tirelessly for causes of social justice and human rights for nearly 50 years. He ended his talk by challenging us Rotarians to do 3 things. 1, check the rosters of the organizations to which we belonged. Number 2, check our employee rosters of the places where we worked. And number 3, read just 1 book on African American history. As the meeting ended, I made a beeline to Luther Carr. I wanted his advice on what book to read. He said Francis was the family authority on Black history, and he would get me a book. Francis is with us today. Welcome, Francis. That's a bigger applause than I got. She's one of Seattle's treasures, who, among other contributions she's made, which are many to this city, she served all 8 years as executive assistant in running the city alongside of Norm Rice. At this point, I want to tell you a little bit more about Luther's background. I'll come back to the 1985 and the Black History Month. He was a 4-sport star at Lincoln High School in Tacoma, which is tough to do. If he concentrated a little more time on track training, many think he would have made the 1956 Olympics. He had, after all, set state records in the 880 relay, the long jump, and the 100-yard dash, that last one in 9.9 seconds. But track wasn't even his number 1 spring sport. He played baseball for Lincoln and the Cheney Studs semi-pro team. He was so good that Branch Rickey came all the way to Seattle to try to recruit him to play for the Dodgers. And he turned him down. But football was the big deal. There was quite a fuss over who he was going to play halfback for. One day it was UCLA, and the next day it would be Illinois, but he finally settled on the hometown Huskies. Luther was probably the best player on the team there in the middle 50s. They called him Hit and Run Carr. After a great 4 years at the UW, he signed with the pros and played halfback for the Oakland Raiders. Now back to 1985. Luther showed up with a book and another one and another one and another one and another one. Now, I've never been known as a speed reader, but Luther said, "Hey, Don, these are Frances's favorite books, and she expects you to read all of them." Well, I hung in there for quite a while, and I finally made it. Now, when Luther's football career ended, he came back to Seattle determined to do what he could do to uplift people and to bring them together. That should been his classification in Rotary, uplift and bring together. He started a construction company which provided jobs that were much needed by a lot of people. And he also started an unparalleled civic career. In 1970, he became the second black member of this club. He was board chair of United Way of King County, and he was on the board of Goodwill for 36 years, which Ken Colling he had to explain it to Ken when he arrived. Luther Carr was a huge help in a lot of parts of this town. Now, believe it or not, Luther is the first black person I ever met. At Roseville High School, our only non-Caucasian was the student body president, a kid named Wing Luke, and a really good kid. When I didn't meet any blacks when I went to the university or even in the Navy. It was how segregated things were in those days, and or in my early business years. Luther and I finally met through the UW Alumni Association and became good friends for a long time. Incidentally, Frances's niece became the first black employee at our advertising agency. You know, as I think about it, a tremendous amount of good has happened in human relations in the Northwest since 1985. Maybe we still aren't reading a lot of black books, but the next two presidents of this club will be women of color. Stand up, stand up. Justice Charles Z. Smith is now a part of black history. And in my opinion, so is Rotarian Luther Carr. Thanks.